From 2001, A Space Odyssey, to The Matrix, to Her, artificial intelligence is presented to us as either a brave new world of unlimited possibility or the downfall of humanity. But enough of the future promises and the fever dreams of tech bros. Back in the real world, AI has been happily racially profiling welfare recipients and falsely accusing them of fraud. This scandal happened via a faulty algorithm which the Dutch tax authorities treated as reliable enough to demand large repayment sums for those labeled as likely fraudsters, leading to ruined lives and even suicides of those falsely accused. So, not so much a future of killer robots, and more the banal present of killer algorithms that, receiving rubbish data in, reproduced it as rubbish data out. As John Oliver says,
"The problem with AI right now isn't that it's smart, it's that it's stupid in ways that we can't always predict."
Welcome to the first episode of our new podcast series, What is Going Wrong and How to Put It Right. Sound editing and musical creation by Kika Ligari. I'm Joana Louçã. What is going wrong and how to put it right. Meanwhile, politicians are still blinded by the promises of tech bros and not paying attention to the real and present dangers of things like discrimination, disinformation, monopoly power, privacy, and the aforementioned problem of rubbish in leading to rubbish out. The kind of things that would require, democratic rules applied to big tech.
Big tech.
Big tech.
Big tech.
Big tech. Big tech.
Okay, so back to the fever dreams of tech bros.
Big tech.
In 2022, the company OpenAI launched ChatGPT and put the AI hype into overdrive. OpenAI did not come out of the blue. It was partly owned by Elon Musk, who since has left the project, but tech giant Microsoft is the largest investor.
Big tech.
The possibilities ChatGPT, even at early stages, offers, and the implications it already has for areas as different as artistic creation, ownership, or teaching, are enormous.
Learn Japanese.
But meanwhile, artificial intelligence is far from being the only source of concern over the power of big tech. Examples mount up of how different social media companies have been involved in disinformation, in targeted advertising, and are examples of excessive market power. Add AI to the mix and all these problems become turbocharged. We must impose democratic limits on the untrammeled and uncontrolled political power of the internet giants. The quote is from Ursula von der Leyen 1 year after assuming the presidency of the European Commission. 1 month prior to that, the European Commission had announced 2 key pieces of legislation that some lawmakers heralded as the European Constitution for the Internet. They were called the Digital Services Act and the Digital Markets Act, known by the friendlier pet names DSA and DMA. Added to those, the AI Act, Artificial Intelligence Act, were an attempt to regulate a sector growing in power and influence. This set in motion a backstage play of operatic proportions, for as the EU has tried to rein in the most problematic aspects of big tech, the digital giants lobbied hard to shape these regulations. And when the words big tech and lobbies come together, you can be sure it is serious.
Big tech. Lobby.
Lobby.
Big tech.
Lobby.
Lobby.
Big tech.
Lobby.
Lobby.
Before we continue, let's hit pause for a moment. What is this big tech that we're talking about? Well, they are the largest digital companies, active in the tech field, platforms, and software and hardware. They are called that because of their size, all having over $1 trillion in market capitalization. And they have a lot of products, so it's really hard to avoid them. I mean, let's face it, you are probably listening to this right now in one of their devices. Their business model is toxic because it is based on massive data collection, on surveillance advertising, and exploitative labor conditions. And while artificial intelligence is becoming more and more central to our daily lives, there are many problems with it. Studies show that AI discriminates. It can be used for worker surveillance, and it can have damaging effects on fundamental rights. Big Tech is often also referred to by the acronym GAFAM for Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and Microsoft. And these 5 companies now have a combined annual lobbying budget of 33 million euros, up from 20 million before the start of the parliamentary term in 2019. And even though that is less than Cristiano Ronaldo makes in 2 months, it is a lot of money. It would allow you to buy a Rembrandt painting. You could also buy a private jet, or if you buy one of the really cheap ones, you could buy 6 of them. But it would also be enough to pay the salary of 680 teachers in Belgium, if they had 4 years of experience, for a whole year. But enough with the comparisons. They have been able to dominate policy conversations and gain privileged access to EU decision makers. For example, in 2023, 78% of meetings with high-level EU officials on the Artificial Intelligence Act were with corporate interests, almost 8 in every 10 meetings. So, back to our story. When Big Tech decided to influence the DMA, the DSA, and the AI Acts, you can bet they did it. And they used their enormous reserve of resources to do just that. They did it on 2 fronts. First, they enjoyed disproportionate access and were able to amplify their message. The aim? Just to make sure that there are as few hard regulations as possible to preserve their business model. If new rules can't be blocked, then Big Tech aims to at least water them down. Secondly, Big Tech has used its massive firepower to fund a wide network of third parties, including think tanks, small and medium enterprises, and startup associations, as well as law and economic consultancies, to push through its messages. A Google lobbying document that was leaked in 2020 emphasizes this strategy. Google's goal was to reset the political narrative around costs to the economy and consumers by mobilizing third parties to echo Google's messages. But by funding these organizations, Big Tech also basically buys access to policymakers. This has led to increasing criticism of the use of fake front groups by Big Tech, which draws parallels to Big Tobacco's lobbying playbook. In one case, for example, members of a digital small and medium enterprise association funded by Big Tech had not even heard of the group that they were supposed to be a part of. At crucial moments, this strategy has been proven to be effective in watering down crucial legislation. When the European Parliament moved to ban surveillance advertisements, part of the DSA legislation, the industry spread misleading information and made extensive use of front organizations to lobby the proposal from the table. And with great success for them, the push by the Parliament to ban surveillance ads was defeated. And by the end of 2023, the tech industry was able to fatally undermine key provisions of the AI Act. In this case, the strategy was particularly perverse. Big tech lobbyists masqueraded as experts and actually co-wrote the draft AI law.
Big Tech. Lobby.
To prepare the AI Act, the Commission set up a group to provide guidance, an expert group. Except in this case, the experts were far from impartial. Almost half of the group consisted of tech companies. Insiders said that any strict rules on problematic AI were immediately swept off the table by the industry experts, who pushed for self-assessment of their technologies. Indeed, self-assessments later became the core part of the Commission's proposal for the AI Act. Self-regulation is a standard proposal from lobbyists. When things are left in their hands, flexibility is big. It allows companies to underplay problems and give priority to their own financial interests. It also opens the door to outright fraud, as in the case of Volkswagen's fraudulent emissions tests to their own vehicles by the Dieselgate scandal.
Big tech. Lobby.
Lobby.
Big tech.
Lobby.
Lobby.
Big tech.
Lobby.
Lobby. Lobby.
I remember witnessing a conversation between my grandparents about 25 years ago. They were both well into their 80s, and my grandmother was arguing that she had no need for a microwave. My grandfather turned to her and said that that was exactly what she had told him 50 years prior about the need for a fridge. I remember thinking at the time that I had never considered debating whether or not to have a fridge. And as technology evolves, we incorporate it in our daily lives for the simplification of processes it seemingly offers, but often without thinking about it twice. I mean, don't get me wrong, fridges are obviously very, very useful, but when we consider, for example, all the apps or AI we use to make our lives easier, or the amount of personal information we share about us, or even worse, about our children, do we really think of the consequences? In the run-up to the European elections in June, and after a term of unprecedented digital rulemaking, the question arises whether big tech has become too big to regulate. And just as big tobacco was eventually excluded from lobbying public health officials after years of dirty lobbying tactics, it is time to restrict big tech companies from lobbying the EU in their interests, when the public interest is at risk. This is the end of our first episode. Please share it, rate it, and send us a message with your feedback. Text editing by Kat Enger, fact-checking and research by Bram Vranken, sound design, editing and musical creation by Guy Caligari, and graphic design by José Torres. I'm Joanna Lassin, and this was Corporate Europe Observatories: What's Going Wrong and How to Put It Right.